Normally, this is where I'd get a boring intro with a joke about the title length and other superfluous stuff. But since this is the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of my hopes and fears for Star-Crossed World, you'll need to pay an extra fee of 80 gem apples to access the full video. Or 60 FPS. Luckily for you, I'm a generous person and will make an exception this time. Star-Crossed World is set to expand the Forgotten Land beyond what we imagined. And even though it's technically just DLC for a 3-year-old game, past expansions have taught us not to underestimate how far Kirby bonus content can go. Although the focus of this video is Star-Crossed World, I'm not ignoring the Forgotten Land itself. Obviously I want the base game to stay the same, just upgraded with smoother 60 FPS and more fluid background animations, which has thankfully already been confirmed. My main fear though concerns the infamous hammer glitch. It's a fun little exploit used to explore out of bounds areas and find multiple final bosses, but more importantly, it has become the go-to method for farming rare stones in the arena. During a casual playthrough you will collect enough of them, but if you're aiming to upgrade every single copy ability to its max level, you're going to be grinding through the arena a lot. Even with the hammer exploit, the grind is still noticeably long, but without it, it becomes painfully tedious. I really hope they don't patch it out, and if they do decide to remove it, then please at least give us an alternative. A faster, less mind-numbing way to farm rare stones. New figures have already been confirmed, and just like every other collection, I assume each one needs to be gathered 9 times to get that tiny crown in the description. I know how ridiculous I sound asking Hell to preserve a glitch just so I and other lunatics like me can willingly sink 100 more hours into a 2-hour game. But the hammer trick is harmless, fun to use, doesn't break the experience and keeps my playtime within the reach of sanity. So far we have gotten a pretty good impression of how much content Star-Crossed World will include. Based on the information provided in the trailer and trios footage, it's expected to feature at least 2 new levels per world, along with just as much to collect as in the regular courses. While I like to keep my expectations low when it comes to the length of DLC like this, the quality of the actual content should go beyond minor changes. I won't be satisfied with an irrelevant asset swap. I want to explore facets of the Forgotten Land that were only hinted at before. What I'm referring to are those grand shots we often see at the beginning of a level, or existing paths we get to explore in a new way. Walking along the tracks of Wandaria without using mouthful mode gives the gameplay a completely unique rhythm, even though it's technically the same environment. Or take splitting the sea to reveal a previously unreachable underwater section. It evokes a sense of curiosity that the Forgotten Land couldn't fully explore due to its linear design. I've said this in another video before, but it really feels like a well-crafted fan mod with a budget. Taking the most intriguing spots from the base game, the ones blocked by invisible walls, and building levels around those "I wonder what's there" moments. The promotional material seems to align with this expectation, and I can only hope the rest of Star-Crossed World follows through. The trailer and YouTube description for some reason confirmed new mouthful modes and apparently at least 1 additional copy ability. Kinda strange to mention such an important feature in a box no one will read, but I'm going for a somewhat ordinary prediction and hope it's Beam. It felt like Beam was the only classic copy ability missing from the roster of skills, and it would be appropriate to make the selection complete in that way. Much more thrilling are the potential evolutions of Beam and how the ability would even work in 3D to begin with. It's a very directional technique, perfectly suited for 2D levels, but naturally more complex in a 3D environment. Another big question is how the new ability is going to be implemented. Will it only appear in Star-Crossed World, or is it accessible in the Forgotten Land too? One of the main downsides people often point out about the Forgotten Land is the relatively low number of copy abilities. So whatever this new one turns out to be, it will be a welcoming addition and ideally something you can use throughout the full game, not just in the DLC. Even more exciting are the unseen mouthful modes. The spring bumper is a welcoming addition. It doesn't overlap with any existing copy ability in the game, seems to serve a distinct purpose among the other mouthful modes, and most importantly, encourages vertical level design, something that was noticeably lacking in the Forgotten Land. Without giving away too much, the trios footage already showcased a good portion of the bumper's level. Not only does it make efficient use of the ability, but it's also built around an entirely new environment. Given how these levels seem to offer more variety than we initially expected, I'm hoping to see see at least 2 more new mouthful modes that fully realize their potential despite what will likely be a limited campaign length. The same goes for the climax. Assuming there's a new final boss, I want to defeat it using a more creative mouthful mode. Forgotten Lands final was perfectly fine, but it was just an exaggerated version of the car, not nearly as imaginative as it could have been. Swallow a meteor, planet pop, a building, a character, I don't care, as long as it defies expectations. Mouthful mode holds so much untapped potential for a sequel, and if this DLC is their final chance to explore it, I really hope they go all in and fully realize the concept in a satisfying way. This brings me directly to my next wish, boss fights. Expecting entirely original new bosses would likely exceed the scope of this DLC, and while I certainly wouldn't turn them down, it's simply unrealistic to expect. The same goes for variations of existing bosses. It's a bit more plausible and to some extent even feasible, but still hard to hope for, especially considering Forgotten Land already offered a substantial post-game. Most bosses in that game receive well-crafted, fine-tuned alternative versions, and I feel like the announcement trailer would have hinted at something similar if it were planned. So while I'm not holding out hope just to avoid disappointment, it's worth noting that Margolos Epilogue did manage to enhance each boss from Return to Dreamland, even with 2 versions of each one already in place. Still, upgrades to mini bosses and at least 1 entirely new enemy have been confirmed, so hopefully we get to see more in that direction. In addition, the final boss absolutely has to deliver at the very least. No matter how unobtrusive an extra mode might have been, ever since Triple Deluxe, each one has introduced a unique final boss on a scale comparable to the main game's climax. It's a pattern that has consistently evolved with each title, and there's no reason to not expect that standard to continue. There are hints pointing towards a potential Galacta Knight appearance, and while I wouldn't be disappointed by that battle, especially in full 3D and likely easier to develop thanks to the 2 existing Knight fights serving as a foundation, it feels a little too safe. The Ultimate Warriors already returned in Return to Dreamland, Planet Robobot, Star Allies, kind of, and the remake of Return to Dreamland, so I'm really hoping for an original boss, something that isn't derived from any prior enemy. Forgotten Land is, by nature, incredibly rich in hidden stories, and Star-Crossed Worlds seems to further emphasize that established mystique. The announcement trailer alone raised and subtly implied even more questions. And while heart-shaped objects falling from the sky might symbolize hope or positivity in other franchises, things are a bit more complicated in Kirby's case. Unlike many others, I don't want all of Forgotten Land's mysteries to be answered. The charm of a good secret lies in its unknowable nature. Some things can be expanded upon, sure, but they should still remain in spirit forgotten. The DLC draws a sharp contrast between the somewhat grounded tone of the base game and the otherworldly blue-tinted aesthetic of Star-Crossed World. This is further amplified by the design of the new characters reverting to traditional floating limbs and cryptic features. That contrast alone creates the whimsical atmosphere we all felt while watching the trailer. And I truly hope this expansion delivers at least 1 exciting reveal, something as memorable and unexpected as the ending of Margolos Epilogue. One mystery they can elaborate on, however, is Nightshell and the absolute banger she delivered in the trailer. I want the rest of the DLC to match the quality of the appetizer we have just been served. Judging by the new mini-boss theme heard in the trio's footage, the soundtrack is shaping up to stand proudly alongside the Forgotten Land's already outstanding musical performance. Visually, there's nothing to complain either. I've already mentioned the beautiful soft blue-toned invasion that colors the screen, and on top of that, 60 FPS is a confirmed fact. At the end of the day, and risking sounding like a child, I just want Star-Crossed World to impress me. I could list endless features to speculate about for the perfect DLC, but at the end of the day, it's still just DLC. There have never been anything quite like this in the franchise, and it's tough to predict ideas without a clear pattern to go by. One thing is certain though, Star-Crossed World sets a high bar for what is to come. It's been 3 years since the Forgotten Land released, and this DLC will be people's first impression of the series on the Switch too. Kirby rarely disappoints, and even without any major new additions to the Forgotten Lands mechanics, there are more than enough tools to give the game a fresh new twist. What's your biggest hope and what's your biggest fear for the DLC? And are you going to buy the expansion right away or wait for a better deal? Normally this is where it gets a boring ending, but since this is the Switch 2 edition of my hopes and fears for Star-Crossed World,